Folks.
All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis. Excuse me. Today's Daf Lamed Vav. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Hashem. So we left off a couple lines on the bottom at Lamed Hey Amud Beis. Nikla. So we're talking about different psulim when it comes to the Esrog. We mentioned one of which was Niklaf, that it was peeled. Omar Rava. So 3 lines from the bottom. Hi esroga diglid kahina sumka ksher. If you have an esrog that it was peeled and it began to turn red, it's kosher. Niklaf puzzle. What do you mean? Look at our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says if it was peeled, it's puzzle. So if you peel it off, right, the outer layer, it's puzzle. So like kasha, habakula, habmiksas. If you can go ahead and remove it without moving any, take it, then kula, it's kosher. Then all of it's okay. But if it's only part of it, then some of it becomes red, some of it becomes not, and therefore it becomes spotted. And we know, as a case of menumar, right, something was spotted, esrog is no good. And nizdak, nikaf, it was cracked, right, or it was punctured, there was a hole in it. Satani ulabar chanina nikev nekev mefulash b'mashu. If there was a hole that went all the way through, it was pierced, you take a needle or some sort and you pierce it all the way through, then it's no good. The sheina mefulash, if there was a hole in it, and once again, nothing was missing, right? If there was a hole in it and nothing was missing, the size of an isser. So it's very, a much larger area that there can be a hole in the esrog and still be kosher. And by Rava says, no do be'esrog simani treifa ma'u. If in the esrog signs of a treifa, if something this would occur, let's say to a lung of an animal, and it would become a treifa, if that does that apply to an esrog? So the Gemara is going to ask, what's the question? Niklaf tanina. Wait, if you're asking if it's peeled off, we already learned. Nizdak, if it was cracked, tanina, we learned. Nik, if it was a hole in a tanina. So what's the question here? What do you ask if it's like a treifa, right? We know by treifa, holes, other things can possibly animals to make it a treifa. So we're asking no, kibayle, kedula, like ula, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So what does he say? So it says, Reya shanishbecha kekiton kshera. If you have a lung, right? So a lung has sort of like a double membrane around it, and it's completely enclosed. And so if the inner becomes dissolved almost to a liquid, right? Nishbek kekiton, like it's like a liquid in a flask, it's still kshera. It's still okay. It's still, the animal is not considered a treifa, even though the inside of the lung is dissolved because the lung itself is closed. And that's only if basically the outer membrane, right, the tubes around the outside, right, the bronchial tubes around the lungs are still intact, right, because then it encloses everything. All like simpona, the treifa. But if it doesn't go ahead and hold it all, then it's a treifa because some of it comes out. So now, how does this relate to an esrog? Hacha mai. Over here, what's halacha? So is the esrog basically the esrog the same? If the esrog, basically the peel on the outside is intact, but on the inside it's dissolved. Right now where the seeds are, but the flesh is basically decomposed, similar to that of the lung. So do you say, Hacha mai, tilma hasam hu delay shalaba avira. Over there, since right it doesn't become exposed to the air, therefore perhaps it become better on its own. But over here, since it is exposed to the air, maybe that therefore it just continues to decompose. It's no good. Or perhaps it's not different. So what is halacha when it comes to an esrog when it's dissolving? So the Gemara says, Toshma, come and listen. Esrog, tafuach, saruach. If an esrog was decayed or rotted, kavush, tafuach. It's decayed, not tapuach, not like apple, right? Tafuach, right? So it says tafuach, right? And the Gemara will explain what tafuach is. Huh?
It's like a tapuach.
It is a ches.
It is a ches.
Tafuach, it means decayed. Doesn't mean it's apple. Yeah. So esrog, tafuach, saruach, which the Gemara will explain what it means to decay, what it means to go ahead and become rot, right? kavush, or if it was pickled, or shaluk, or if it was cooked.
What if you stick it in the freezer? I always wanted to do that.
So it doesn't say anything
Well,
they
it's not
call
gonna pull it out of it.
Kushi. If it was Kushi, if it was from the land of Kush, right?
What's wrong with that?
We'll see. What? Lavan, or if it was white, right? Menumar or spotted puzzle. All these cases are puzzle, right?
Sushi must be black, no?
Yeah, but we'll soon see. Right. I mean, from that right. So
Yeah, but
estrog, if there was estrog kadur, if the estrog was round like a ball, puzzle. Some say even if it's like a double, it's like a twin. An estrog, habaiser, an estrog which is a baiser. Baiser really usually refers to a baiser usually refers to something in its early stages of growth, such as grapes, right? Habaiser means usually the early stages of grapes. So over here, very small, young estrog. Rebbe Kiva, paisel. Rebbe Kiva says paisel chaim achshin. Chaim say kasher. Galu b'tfus. They put it. Go ahead, and it grows in a. The fus is like a frame, a bowl, or to shape it. Vasu can mean briacheres. And if it was made like another shape, they wanted a cool esrog to be shaped like something else, let's say like a banana, right, or something. I don't know, right? Puzzle. Then it's puzzle. So that was the Bryce. It's Ketani Mias. Nevertheless, let's learn from there. Tafuach saruach, right? That it was decayed and rotted. So my lav tafuach mibechutz v'saruach mifnim. Doesn't it mean that it was decayed on the outside and it was saruach and it started to rot on the inside? In other words, and this is the case of before, where basically the outer was intact, but the inner side was basically dissolving. And therefore, it's the same case of, and we say it's puzzle. So therefore, that was the case. We asked by the treifa. So whereas it's not low. Over there, no, both those are talking about the outside. It is tafuach or mibechutz. V'lo kasha. Had tafach al gadol sarach and the sarach al gadol tafach. One is that no, perhaps that it what's it called? That it decayed on the outside, even though it wasn't rotted. Then it was rotted on the outside, wasn't decayed. It was both talking about the outer, but not. It was not discussing a case of where the inside went bad, and therefore there's no answer to our question of basically if it sort of dissolves on the inside, but the outside is sort of intact, right? What is the halacha there? So Amar Mar Esrog Kushi Pasal. So we say it Esrog Kushi, right, from Ethiopia, or Kushi from the land of Kush is Pasal. Now, Botani Kushi Kasher, right? But we learned another brayso that says a Kushi is Kasher. So my answer is now Kasher Daima. So it says Vatana Kushi Kasher. So it says no. Daima the Kushi and Daima the Kushi Pasal. Oh, and over there it says if is Kushi itself, that is Kasher, because that's a type of esrog. This type of species of esrog grows, and it grows very dark in the land of Kush. The other ones grows from your regular esrog tree, but it's darkened. There's something wrong with this tree, whatever it is, and therefore that is possible. And our Kitranami Masnisan Daima the Kushi. So that which we said, right? It was when we said Kushi is no good, not that it was the type of species where it grows black or whatever is dark, and therefore no, that is actually okay. If it was grown from a regular esrog tree, but it grew dark, that is no good. And Rav Amar like Kashya Hala and Havalu. One is us, one is them. In Eretz Yisrael, where they're used to the yellow esrogim and some, so therefore only the yellow kind is good. But in an area where they use, where the normal esrog is the darkened one, right? Such as in Bavel, or where I guess they would import from Kush, right, from Ethiopia, from Africa somewhere, those cases the esrog would be kosher. Then we say Habaiser, Rebbe Kiva Paisach Machshir. So the Baiser, Rebbe Kiva says Paisach Machshir. So Amar Rabba, Rebbe Kiva, Rebbe Shimon, Amr Davarach. So a young esrog, a small esrog, is Paisach on Rebbe Kiva. Chama says kosher. So Rebbe Kiva, Rebbe Shimon, Amr Davarach. They actually held the same thing. Rebbe Kiva had Amr. Rebbe Kiva says that we just said. In other words, he says a small esrog, a young, I guess premature, underripe, right? Underripe. Such an esrog is no good, right? It's not considered to be an esrog yet. And Rabbi Shimon, Mahi, what's the case of Rabbi Shimon where he says the same thing? Did Tanan, I said, did Tanan. Rabbi Shimon Paiter as esrogim bekutna, right? Rabbi Shimon Paiter is esrogim for taking meiser when they're too small. So because they're too small, they're not ripe yet. It's not considered a fruit. You don't take meiser. Rabbi Kiva says because it's too small, it hasn't ripe yet, and therefore you can't use an esrog. Shita. So Amalei Abaye says no. Dilma Elohi. Maybe that's not the same, right? Same equation there. Ad kind of like Rabbi Kiva Hacha to be an hadar. Over here, when he creates hadar, he has to be a nice fruit. So therefore, a small one is not hadar. So therefore, it's no good. However, Veleka Velhasam Karabansvila. Over there, in the case of Meiser, maybe a small estrog does qualify for Meiser because there is no requirement of creates hadar that has to be nice and ripe. Inami, or you can say Ad kind of like Rabbi Shimon Hasam El Dechsiv Aser Taser Es Kol Tuas Zarecha. The pasuk says over there by taking meiser, it says give meiser from all that was planted. Kederch shpnei adam meitzna nazriya. In other words, it has to be grown to the level of basically where you take the seeds and replant it. So therefore, something which is too small, you can't go ahead and replant it. Therefore, there are buttons, say your putter, when it comes to esrog, if it's too small, if it's not ripe yet. But over here, maybe they would hold that if a young budding or young small esrog, even though it hasn't ripened yet, maybe that would be okay to qualify for the mitzvah of esrog and the sula meat. Right, top of the page, and then there's no more question. You can't compare the two. We can't necessarily say Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shimon are the same shita because there could be other factors involved. Fine. Gadol, but the food he goes ahead and he grows them in a form. They also committed bria acheres puzzle. Then he shapes like something else, then it's puzzle. And Amar Revelation who ela committed bria acheres only if it's shaped like it's something else. About kabriasa kasher, but if it's you shape it like an esrog in a form, then it's kasher. So it says pshita committed bria acheres. To Tanya, right? It says over there that it was grown in, right, in a only if it was shaped like something else. If it was shaped like an esrog, it would be okay. Whereas there's no lo tzricha the avida dape. Yeah. So over there, we're talking about a case of where they make many different planks, and as you know how like the outside of esrog is sort of ridged, and sometimes it's like. Could be so over there. They grow like there where it's there. I guess the ridges are even more defined, right? The ridges are more defined, and therefore, right? Rashi is coming crush him, can Gilgal Shorachim, right? Like a water wheel, right? It has like the peg sticking out, so it grows in. So when it comes into the form that it's more almost like like the star fruits that we have, sort of like that, it's shaped like a star fruit, right? So therefore, it's such a case that even though it's quote unquote an exaggerated shape of an estrog, that would still be okay. Estrog shenegvu.
Shape is important.
Well, it's important that it doesn't grow. You can't form it. You had to grow it in a form, but if it's shaped, if it's like an estrog, even though it's an exaggerated estrog, that would be okay. So estrog shenegvu achbarim, an estrog that holes were made from mice. Amarav ein zehid, right? That's not hider, right? There's no priyas hadar here. It doesn't qualify. It's no good.
It didn't say puzzle. He said,
well, he's saying
it's
true. But what he means is that it doesn't qualify for priyas hadar. No, therefore it would be an esrog. No, it's just puzzle because
He does read the puzzle.
Right. So Gemara says, "Eini, is this so?" Rabbi Chanina matil b'av and nothing but Rabbi Chanina. He used to dip his, in his sauce, and he'd take a bite out of his esrog and then use it. Rabbi Chanina. So firstly, you said if mice eat from it's no good. Rabbi Chanina ate from it, but Rabbi Chanina, according to Rabbi Chanina, kashem asnisin. Rabbi Chanina, look at our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says if it's chaser mashu, if it's missing something, it's puzzle. So how can he go ahead and take a bite? So kashem asnisin. So bishlam asnisin Rabbi Chanina kasha. I understand you can give a teretz according to Rabbi Chanina inside a kasha. Can be a rishon. In the case of a rishon, now it says lakachtem lachem bayom rishon. So we say the type of lakicha it has to be a lakicha tam, right? It has to be a complete taking, right? In other words, it has to be complete, but it only says bayom rishon. So everything has to be complete bayom rishon. If it's the second day, you don't have the requirements. Even if your esrog is chaser, it's okay. So that which Rabbi Chanina says, Mishnah says it can't be missing anything. No, that's only talking about the first day because it has to be complete. But the second day, it's okay. So it's only the second day Rabbi Chanina, took a bite out of his esrog. El Rav Kasha. According to Rav's Kasha, Rav said mice eat from it is no good, right? And Rabbi Chanina says it's good. No, maybe because if mice eat from it, even from the second day, it's gross. It's mice. It's not like a person eating from it. It's rodents eating from it. Since a rodent's eating for it, therefore that's different than somebody else eating from it. You can't compare the two cases. Rodents eating from it, that's possible. A human eats from it, that's okay. And Ikadami, some different version, Amarav Zehadar, right? This is Hadar, but nothing but, right? So some say that, no, what do you mean? How could you say that my eating from it? Rabbi Chanina used to go ahead and dip it, and he would, he would eat it. So you see, it's considered to still be qualified as Hadar. How could he do that? Rabbi Chanina kasha b'asnisin, so the kasha can't be Yontav Rishon, can't be Yontav Sheni. No, because one is talking about Yontav Rishon when you go ahead and eat it. So therefore, that's no good because it has to be Lekicha Tema. It has to be complete lulav set by Yom Rishon. And therefore, if you take a bite out of it, or if mice take a bite out of it, it's no good. But on the second day, Sheni, to it afterwards, then you don't have the requirement of Tema, right? It has to be complete. And therefore, it would be kosher to use on days 2 through 7, because it's not the pasuk of lakachtem lachem.
So because the later days are derabanan,
are not right, and therefore it doesn't have the qualification of lakicha tema, complete taking. 2 dots. So esrog cotton. So we say a small esrog was a machloikas, the size. So the Mishnah said, if I could find the Mishnah would be nice for right about now. Thought it was a Mishnah there. Maybe it's a Lamadal on the base. The Mishnah says if it was cotton. Rameir Omer Ka'egos, Rameir says size of a walnut, and Rabbi Huda Omer Kabesa, size of an egg. So Zok the Gemara, Amar Rav Bar Papa, Kamachlegas Kan, Kach Machlegas Be'avanim Mekuzolos. The same machlokas here, the size, walnut versus egg, is the same machlokas when it comes to wiping stones, right? Smooth stones, which were used to go ahead and wipe in the bathrooms back in the day, the tiny little brisa. The Shabbos Gimel Avanim or Kazalos Mutalach is the basic kisei. Right, you're allowed to go ahead and take 3. It's not too much. The amount of 3 stones you can go ahead and take to the basic kisei. And the question was there, but Kamashirin, and how big were the stones? And Rabbi Meir goes, Rabbi Yehuda Meir Kabetz. Rabbi Meir says the stones the size of a walnut, and Rabbi Yehuda says the size of an egg. The Gadol Kadei and a large one wants to see to be able to hold 2 in one hand. The other one says big enough even if you hold with 2 hands. So Tanya Rabbi Yaisi Ma'aser Rabbi Kiva Shabbat Beis Knesses the Esrog Aksepo. His Esrog was so big he carried it in on his shoulder. So Rabbi Yehuda Misham Ra'if, there's a proof of him. Amrullah ain't the hider. They told him, no, this is not hider, right? You got your Esrog the size of a watermelon. That's not hider. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Mishnah says, hey.
I was once in Crown Heights.
Yeah.
For Sukkot, and everybody lined up to bench Esrog at the Rebbe's.
Yeah.
Esrog. The Esrog was.
Oh, is that big? Oh, yeah.
I had never seen that.
Yeah,
When was this? This is before. This is when he was still. I would say this is when he was alive.
No, it's after he died.
You never know. You say it's the Rebbe's Esrog. You put it
By
there.
the way, I thought the Gemara was saying that that hitter depends on your location. Meaning, what's hitter over here is not hitter over
Oh,
here.
so we did say that when it came to the Esrog Kushi, right? It's a good question, right? It's a good point. Over there, we said, well, in Kushi or in Bavel, where they used to use Esrog Kushi, that was okay.
It was only by the Kushi answer? Okay.
Right, that was okay, right? So your question really is, so I understand it. It's one locale, so it could be that in one locale, this is the normal, this is how they grow, then it'll be okay. If it's not how they grow, right? If they grow, extremely large, right? Then maybe then it would be okay. Fine. So Zak the Mishnah, there's a lulav el bamino. Divi Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Yehuda, you can only when we go ahead and bind the lulav, you can only go ahead and bind it with that from its own kind, from the same tree, from the palm tree. Rabbi Meir afil b'chut b'meshicha, even with thread, even with another material, right? Even with another material, you can go ahead and do it. And Amar Meir Ma'asav Anshi Yerushalayim Shayoigdus Luvayan Gimahanes Shazov needs to go ahead and wrap theirs with some sort of golden threads, and they would to make it nice, right? Beautiful. I think you see there's a lot of I've seen it in Israel right? Some people use like gold or whatever. I think they started some sort of Spartan. Do I wish Yigal was here? He could tell us. So I'm not calling him out. I'm sure he's busy now, probably performing an emergency surgery. So I'm but so he says no. Even in that case, they would bind it from its own kind in the bottom, and they would put something else on the outside. In other words, that wasn't the official binding of the dalaminim. That was, that was underneath. It was something else. Zok the Gemara, Omar Rava, Afilu Sif, Afilu Bikra, the Dikla. You can go ahead and even with different parts that grow from the palm tree, from the ivy, or some of the bark, you can use that to go ahead and bind the dalaminim. Omar Rava, my time to Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason according to Rabbi Yehuda? Which says you can only use bamino, you can only use from its kind, you can't use something from another type of tree or whatever. So Ksaver Lulav Tzrichagad, he holds a lulav does require binding. You go ahead and bring another kind, you bring string, you bring something from another tree. Now you don't have dalaminim, you have chamisha minim, right? The Amar Rava Menam Allah, the Sivi Ikra, the Dikla Mina de Lulav. How do we know that that's considered to be part of the lulav? Who? The Tanya, we're learning in the Brisa. It says, "Besukos teishvu sukkah shall kol davar." Divrei Meir says, sukkah, you should dwell in there. So made of any material, Divrei Meir. And Rabbi Yehuda Meir, ein sukkah nohagas ella bedalad minim shebelulav.
What, that's what the Tachat Meir?
Everything has to be made of that. Everything has to be. The sukkah is only made of the dalad minim shebelulav. Right. So everything is made from the lulav. Right. Now, why? But didn't I say you can make an argument? He says, "Ma lulav shein naheg b'leila is ki yamim in aravas minim." The lulav that's not naheg nights, only during the days. Nevertheless, you have to do dalad minim. So sukkah should have b'leila so b'yamim and a ditch let's el b'aravas minim. So it's an obvious, right? It's more important. It's day and night. It's an obvious. We should use it for the dalad minim. Some low. Anything that you come and want to bring a chumrah, you can only use the 4 species for the sukkah, right? For the sukkah, to be a chumrah and it ends up being a kula is not considered to be a logical argument. Not considered to be a logical argument. Why is that? So it could be by the schach that we're talking about. Referred to the schach is made of the dalaminim. Right, not the walls. The schach. So he's coming to Machmer. He says, in the case of a lulav, you dalaminim. So by sukkah, which is more chashuv than lulav, because sukkah applies to day and night, certainly you can only use dalaminim for the schach. Right, you be Machmer. No, I want to use my, the regular schach or evergreens to cover my sukkah. No good. No, but, so what's the kula? So that's good, right? So lo matzar b'minim. If you don't have dalaminim, yeshiv batal. Matarama b'sukkah station she'as yamim sukkah shakol davar. Why? Because you're not going to have dalaminim, and you're going to say, I'm pater from sukkah, right? No, because that's a kula, right? Since you're pater from sukkah, you can't get dalaminim. There's no dalaminim in the town. What? Because you can't fulfill the mitzvah, so don't send the mitzvah. I can cover with other trees. No, you shouldn't do it. Don't go in. It's nothing. So you see, it's a kula, right? So we're not requiring you to go in the sukkah and sit under your maple leaves. So therefore, since it turns out to be a kula, therefore it's no good. All right, we'll stop here. So tomorrow, Mr. Shem, we will continue from the 3 lines of Tav Shkoyach. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll see if I'm here tomorrow.